This program is brought to you by Emory University.
I work at the Manuscript Archives and Rare Book Library at Emory University, which we call MARBL. We have a remarkable collection of maps here at MARBL. We specialize in maps of the South, of Georgia, and in particular of Atlanta. And today I want to show you two rare atlases of Atlanta, one from 1878 and one from 1928, and talk to you about the kinds of things that we can learn from these atlases and also about the digital innovations that we are using to provide new access to these materials. The first map I'd like to show you is an 1878 map of Atlanta published by G.M. Hopkins of Baltimore, Maryland. This plate shows the importance of railroads to Atlanta in the 1870s. As you can see here, the center of the city is marked by the Union Depot. And as the rail lines cut across the city, downtown emanates from around it. You can see the Kimball House Hotel here, which was the first project that was completed after the Civil War. And you can see how dense the structures are around the depot and then around the freight offices and even the roundhouse where they worked on the locomotives here. There's churches, there's City Hall, schools, businesses. This really was the heart of Atlanta at this time. And one of the most interesting aspects of this is, as you see here, here's the true magnetic north, and it's pointing that direction. But the city is oriented to the rail lines. People always ask me, why isn't downtown Atlanta on a grid? And I say it is on a grid. As you can see here, it is a grid, but it's oriented to the rail lines and not to magnetic north. So you have to get up to about Houston Street before the city actually turns into a grid that's oriented to the cardinal directions. You can also see on here that there's great data on this map. Like you have the names of the people who own the property. Like this is L.P. Grant, who was Lemuel P. Grant, and he was the one who developed Grant Park and gave the city the park in that project east of Atlanta. You can also see things like here it says Mrs. Rice. So one of the things that we want to be able to do is extract this data and be able to map male property owners, female property owners. We want to take this data and combine it with data from city directories so that we can determine the race of the folks who are identified on these land lots so that we can map out racial land owning patterns in the city at this time. The next atlas is Atlanta and Vicinity from 1928. This is a really remarkable piece because it captures the city at a time when the definition of Atlanta was changing. As you can see from the two sheets of this atlas, they're at different scales. This one is of downtown Atlanta, and the scale here is 1 to 250. And this is of the suburbs. You can see Buckhead right here, which is at a scale of 1 to 500. On the 1 to 250 scale, you can see that there are individual building footprints outlined. At the 1 to 500 scale, they couldn't do this, so what you have is these little dots that mark structures along the way. And the reason why they did this is because Atlanta had expanded so much after World War I that they couldn't include all of the city, including the suburbs now, the true automobile suburbs now, at a 1 to 250 scale. This is an example of the 1 to 250 scale from the Central Business District. Here's the state capitol on Capitol Avenue. Here's the county courthouse. And the railroad tracks you can see are just starting to come in through here. Up here is where Georgia State is now. And one of the interesting things I wanted to show you is both how dense this area is. Like Whitehall Street here was the one of the major shopping districts at this time. But then also down here below Fair Street, below Memorial, is the city still has a residential area. As you can see, Fulton High School is here. The Immaculate Conception Convent is here. There's a synagogue here. The Jewish Educational Alliance here, Atlanta Gospel Tavern, and around it are houses. These houses were built in the 1880s and 1890s, and subsequently, as the preferred residential area migrated north in Atlanta, these houses were subdivided. But there were still a lot of folks living around here because there's a residential infrastructure in this area. And so Even though you have this dense downtown core, it was also surrounded by a residential area, which is something you don't see in downtown Atlanta much anymore. The exciting thing is that we can provide access to these materials now to students, staff, faculty, scholars, and the general public. We can provide it on the web, and we can also take these materials and use them to create digital research tools, things that we couldn't do before, so that we now have new ways to visualize and analyze the city.
The preceding program is copyrighted by Emory University.